Hi everybody, my name's Kirsty Richardson and I was due to teach an Alexander Technique workshop for you all this term, but in the absence of that I thought I'd give you a few principles to play around with and a little bit of signposting around what the Alexander Technique is and how it can help you with mobility and feeling a bit looser in the joints, and just some playful thoughts around the technique. So first of all, we're going to think about where the spine ends. A lot of us think it ends around here, sort of where the chin is, but I have a skeleton here conveniently, and if we look at the skeleton from the side, the chin's much lower, and then the spine comes right up, almost between the ears, and that's where the skull balances on top of the spine. And this is very important because often when you're doing exercise or in yoga specifically, you might do something with the spine and then we leave the head out. We're often leaving the head out, but if we can think of the spine ending between the ears, then the skull becomes involved in all of that movement. So we're thinking from the sacrum, from the base of the spine, all the way up. Think of a lovely fluid spine floating up. And then the head is just balanced on the top. Now the head is very heavy, and I don't know if you know how heavy it is, but when you go to the supermarket, if you see a bottle this size, just pick it up, because this is basically around the weight of your head, between 12 and 14 pounds. And so if we're constantly doing activities with our chin sticking forward, especially on the computer, or always at the side, or we're always looking up, that has a whole ricochet effect in the rest of our body, how we hold the rest of our body, because we're compensating all the way down the body. So we're going to look at how we can free off a little bit and free off the joints and just get some more ease and flow in the movement. So we're thinking of the sacrum up to the atlanto-occipital joint, softening the facial muscles and just opening. The other place I want to talk about is the legs. So we're going to think of 3 joints in the legs. We're going to think of the hips, the knees and the ankles. And they work as a team. If the knees are stiff, then you'll be holding tightly in your ankles or your hips, and vice versa. So all 3 of them need to be working together to get the most mobility and movement together. So I have, again here, when we think of the hips, we often think of the top of the thigh bone, or we think of where you would in fashion have something going across the hips, but this is the iliac crest, part of the pelvic bowl. I want you to think about the ball and socket, and you'll see here it's very close to the pubic bone. So when we come to the hips a bit in a minute, we're going to find these on our own body, but it's very close to the pubic bone. It's not out here and it's not down here. So we're going to look at freeing those off, and then towards the end we're going to play with loosening all of those joints together. What you need is a couple of pillows, so if you can grab those, I'm going to step back and we're going to just have a little explore at how to move with some flow and fluidity with the Alexander directions, and maybe discovering some habits of our own. So another big part of the Alexander Technique is that we break bad habits. So we might always stand on one leg, for example, and how that over time builds up a whole sort of structure and muscular tension towards one side of the body, because that's where we're dominant. So we're trying to bring ourselves back to balance. Okay, so go get your cushions. And the first thing I'd like you to do is place them on the floor, and then you're just going to step on them. So if we just step on the cushions like this, and we're just going to run through what I've just said to you earlier. So starting with the head. So we're thinking about softening around the jaw, we're thinking about softening around the throat and the back of the neck, and we're thinking up from the crown of the head, not the centre, just the crown, which is a little bit further back. Notice if you've got a tendency to lift the chin or drop the chin or have the head to one side, so you can play around a little bit, and then just stay with this thought of coming up from the crown of the head. Now if we come to the feet, we want a similar observation. We want the feet just to release into the cushions. And while we're standing here, I want you to think about softening the ankles, the knees, and now the hips. So with the hips, imagine you had a swimsuit or trunks on, and then you've got a line coming up the front. And if you just point quite close to where that swimsuit and that line would cross, that's where you bend from. We often bend from the waist, but we're going to think of bending actually from the ball and socket, which is what it's designed for, and what most of us stop doing. We start working in this way that we use the shoulders and we start rounding the back, we're reaching awkwardly, when we actually can, we've got a lot of movement when we bend from the ball and socket. So you're thinking about softening in those three joints, thinking up through the crown of the head, so spine bubbling upwards, space in between each vertebrae. And then just to add to that, I want you to think of just allowing the arms to drop. So just allowing the arms to be free. Notice if you're holding under the armpit. Notice if you're slightly bringing your shoulders forwards, or just sort of hyper tension, bringing them back to some other state where you're throwing your ribs forwards. You just want a nice openness, but you want a wide back. So you don't want to pinch the back, you want to keep the back wide. And then you're just playing with this sense of up from the crown of the head. It doesn't mean it has to be stiff and held, just up from the crown of the head. Now you're going to come off the cushions. And what you'll notice is that your feet begin to feel a little bit more connected to the floor. So they're a little bit more able to sense what's in contact with the floor and what isn't in contact with the floor. So just allow the feet to spread and soften onto the floor with these lovely joints, the ankles, knees and hips. And then we're just going to continue that to the arms, other places we bend, the wrist, elbow, shoulder. Also want you to think about where the clavicle meets the sternum, so we release from there so we can open. What often happens is we go wrist, shoulder, elbow, and we stay without shoulder lifted. So we want wrist, elbow, shoulder, and make sure you're just allowing everything to release and open out. Same on the other side. Wrist, elbow, shoulder, and then just another check that you're releasing from the clavicle out. So you've got this lovely sense of a spine floating up, the feet are supple, and the joints bend and fold where they're supposed to. So we're not overusing. So for instance, if we were reaching for something in the cupboard, we're not overusing the rest of the body, we're just reaching with a free neck. We keep everything else free so that we can use the body properly and not overuse the same joints over and over and over again. So with that in mind, this is the fun bit. We're going to play with that. So we're going to play with moving the joints fluidly just for 2 minutes. So you can follow me or do your own version of what I'm doing. So bear with me. I'm just going to play some music on. Great. I'll just turn this down just a little bit. So you've got a very nice soft sway. And then just come off the centre, so go forwards and back. So just finding that. Notice if you're holding in your knee, holding in your ankle. And try the other one. Just go forwards and backwards. Very nice. And then just changing feet from side to side. Feet are like cat's paws, they're really receptive to the floor. And you're bending from your hips, so there's a lot more movement. So you can take it from side to side, lovely. And then you can try an arm, notice where you bend from, whether the whole body gets involved or not. So you've also also got the spirals beginning to come into play. Lovely. Just a gentle, and this is something you can practice. Notice if you're holding under your armpits. This is something you can practice when you're waiting for the kettle to boil. Just playing with where the body bends. You're thinking up from the crown of the head. So there's a lightness. Or you can stick very much to the simple swaying and just thinking up through the crown of the head. And supple feet. Of this two-way that you can go up and you can go down and you can widen. But it's not through stress and tension, it's just through opening. Lovely. Thank you very much. I look forward to meeting you in person.